Welcome to the Tuesday edition of the Mrs. R Relevant Daily Draft Podcast. It is the Tuesday warm-up act for Randall and Andy, but, it's a warm-up for retired NFL offensive lineman Jerry Ostrowski. So I'm comfortable with you guys in the warm-up seat with the early podcast. Andy, what is the big news in college football for you today?
Well, I feel like every week when you ask me this, I have something to say about Dante Moore. And he had a phenomenal game against Rutgers this past weekend. I know it's Rutgers, but it's all we wanted to see out of a rebound game. And in other news for quarterbacks, Fernando Mendoza, phenomenal game he had. Ty Simpson, phenomenal game. This quarterback class is starting to take shape. But we've got some wide receivers to talk about today, and I'm very excited to get into these couple names we got today.
Yeah. Randall, how are things going in your football world?
Oh man, catching up. I had a busy weekend with not a lot of football, family in town. So then I'm still catching up on it. Super excited to talk wide receivers. Very excited to get Andy's opinion on a Colorado guy that we're going to talk about because he'll know more than me for sure. So I'll learn a little bit in our Colorado prospect, I'm sure.
Yeah, so as Randall and Andy said, we are here to cover wide receivers today in the 2026 NFL Draft. And we're going to be talking about these 8 specific wide receivers. This is the third of 8 podcasts like this. So next week, we will be at the halfway point. So at this point, today, we're going to cover Brandon Inniss from Ohio State, Caullin Lacy from Louisville, Omega Blake from Arkansas, Lewis Bond from Boston College, Sincere Brown from Colorado, Duce Robinson from Florida State, Kobe Prentice from Baylor, and Omar Cooper Jr. from Indiana. The first player we're going to talk about is Brandon Inniss. Randall, you want to kick this one off?
Absolutely. Brandon Inniss. So, Ohio State, wide receiver, right? And then I was looking at his production, and I was looking because he's a junior, true junior. And I was looking at his production. I was like, 113 yards, 1 touchdown. This can't be right. And then obviously we always remember that it's always just a cycle of Ohio State wide receivers going in. So Brandon Inniss, 6 foot, 199, right 200, perfect kind of size in that slotting out wide. He was a 4-star prospect. He was the 5th highest rated wide receiver in the 2023 class. High school scouting reports compared him to Amon-Ra St. Brown, which is an insane comp to do outside of high school. He started producing in varsity football at 8th grade, dual athlete in football and basketball. He's matching his stats in 2024 to 2025 at 14 catches, 176 yards, and 1 touchdown. In 2024, he's up to 14 catches at 113 yards and 1 touchdown. Obviously, those stats go in with Brandon Inniss is playing the patient game, as all these wide receivers are. Carnell Tate is taking off this year. He's going to declare. Jeremiah Smith is a freak, so we're talking about him, already getting ready for the 2027 draft for him. I believe in 2026, it will be Brandon Inniss' turn to take that leap with Jeremiah Smith and have that duo that they will have. I mean, when it comes to comparing him to Amon-Ra St. Brown, I can't say I agree because, he's getting about 2 to 3 targets right now, but I wouldn't be surprised if I see it next year. His releases at the line and his stem work are actually kind of similar in that Amon-Ra St. Brown category. He does that hesitation lateral move off the line, and then he's super patient at the stem, and he can just plant his foot and separate really well. Didn't have a lot of balls thrown to him, but in his routes where he didn't get the ball, I saw him separate on the outside and the inside. It was very impressive. He's got really quick feet. He's fluid. He has good hands and fluid after the catch, so you see that already. He's a very willing blocker, and he's physical in the blocking game. He wants to kind of shove you around and things like that. So when it comes down to it with Ohio State, with the minimal work, I think he's obviously going to stay for another year. It would not make sense for him to declare. But next year, I think that he'll probably be a top 10 wide receiver because we're looking at, next year's class and Cam Coleman, Jeremiah Smith, Ryan Williams, and things along the line. It's going to be a tough class, but he has the ability and he does remind me a little bit of Amon-Ra St. Brown to be in that top 10 category for sure.
Andy, what do you have on Brandon Inniss?
Yeah, I think Randall nailed it. I think Brandon Inniss is a 2027 draft guy because the production is so low. But there are some very nice traits with him. Quick feet, good body control, quickly gets in and out of cuts, solid hands, creative after the catch, good elusiveness, thrives with physicality, willing blocker. There are some separation issues I have with Inniss. He's not phenomenal as a separator. Could get a lot better in that area. But as a whole, it's tough to get a solid, stable evaluation, which is why I would say I'm pretty out on the idea of Brandon Inniss being a 2026 draft guy, and he is solely a 2027 draft guy. But I think over the summer going into the 2027 draft, this could be a guy that the consensus likes because Ohio State, because of what we've seen in glimpses. I think Inniss does have the NFL in his future, but more distant rather than near.
Yeah, so I guess one of the questions I have is when you're looking at a player, so the limited production is obvious, right? I mean, there's a lot of mouths to feed in that offense, and he's at best third in the pecking order, and I bet some people could argue that he's fourth or fifth in the pecking order. If you had to grade him against the 16 wide receivers that we've covered so far, does he get a draftable grade if he did come out this year, or the grade isn't draftable and he needs another season to improve his runway?
Okay, quick. Is the question just the 16 people we talked about is entering the draft plus Brandon Inniss? Is that the question?
Yeah, so basically he's the 17th player in the list.
That's the pool. Yeah, I would draft him. Personally, I really like his physicality in the blocking game. He looks like he's able and willing, which shows me that even though he's not getting the targets, he's willing to put in the work and practice, and that's something that I do love. And willing to do the dirty work while you have Jeremiah Smith and Carnell playing, right? and then I think his route running is really, really good, and his hesitation off the line and at the stem work is good enough, and I would bet on those traits.
Yep. And do you project those traits to be an NFL player or an NFL starter, Randall?
NFL starter.
How about you, Andy? Do you project Inniss with all of your descriptions as an NFL starter?
I think he very well could be. I think he has a very high upside.
Okay. So
I'm also gonna bet on Brian. Sorry, I'm also gonna bet on Brian Hartline.
Yes. Yes. Next, yeah, just another Ohio State wide receiver, but we want to scout the player, not the helmet.
I know.
So this is the first of two Louisville wide receivers we're going to cover. But if you want to see Chris Bell, you're going to need to tune into the 8th episode, not the 3rd. Like I said, this is the 3rd of 8 podcasts we're doing, and we're going to be evaluating 64 wide receivers. So Caullin Lacy from Louisville, 5'10", 190. Andy, what else do you have on him?
Yeah, Caullin Lacy has taken a big step up this year. Last year at 196 yards with 3 touchdowns. This year already 326 yards, 2 touchdowns. Has really emerged as the Louisville wide receiver 2, which we all wanted to see. Solid game against Miami this past week. What I like is, slightly smaller guy, but showcases the athleticism, solid hands, solid route runner, just does everything well. As for a draft grade on Caullin Lacy, it's another one of those where I want to wait and see, how the rest of the year looks for him, because the production, while it is high, is also mainly due to a phenomenal game against Bowling Green, where he had 8 receptions, 97 yards, 1 touchdown. So I want to see him make this, a consistent thing against a tough ACC schedule down the stretch, where Louisville could be playing in the ACC championship game, and that would be a phenomenal opportunity for someone like Caullin Lacy to thrive in.
So, Randall, how about you? What did you have on Caullin Lacy?
Yeah, four-star prospect turned into a four-star transfer, which is good because he started at South Alabama, then moved to Louisville and kind of stayed there, which I think is good, especially going into the big competition and how they graded him, especially starting in South Alabama. Kind of devastating that he broke his collarbone last year and then he had to redshirt. I think that he was doing well in the beginning of 2024, and then that kind of stunted him. And Louisville was using him a little bit differently last year than they did this year, especially in his average depth of target. In his average depth of target in 2024, before he broke his collarbone, he was about 10 to 11 in average depth of target. This year, he's only at 3.4. So they're using him a lot in the short game, and that's what it's hard to evaluate him at that point because he's only getting 1.53 yards per route run with the average depth of target only at 3.4. He's that slot with gadget capabilities. And if you look at like the Pittsburgh game, he had 8 for 95. Like that was a really good game, but it was a lot of soft coverage and comebacks where he was picking up those yards and then advancing and getting those yards. So they were kind of easy dink and dunks for him. So it's hard to evaluate at that point. But he is just a really speedy guy at 5'10", 190. He's got good explosion. He finds open space. He's great in zone, as we talked about. He can find that second level, sit in zone and find it. His deceleration is really good on short and immediate hitches. Those are good. His route running can use a little work. And press man, a cornerback can kind of mirror him pretty easily and dictate his route and leverage. So that's where he kind of needs to work on it. If it's press man and you're about 2 feet away, he can kind of twitch his way out of it. But again, physicality is a big stopper. Louisville's kind of made him one-dimensional this year right now. But I do think that if he continues where he is and maybe an uptick in production, somebody is going to draft him because his kick returning and punt returning is dynamite. So he could squeeze into NFL teams as that wide receiver 5 because they want, with the new rules, that kick returner and punt returner. He had last year, even before he broke his collarbone, he had a 101-yard kick return for a touchdown. And now this year he's already got 2 punt returns for a touchdown. He's electric as a returner. Super dope. Very good vision matched with elusive moves. Gets him out there and he's got good hands. He's got good ball locating on those returns. So I think he could be a shoo-in for the NFL draft, maybe as a PFA if he doesn't continue. But I think that NFL team's going to look hard at his special teams ability and want to use him for sure.
Yeah, so Randall, giving a Bills flashback to 2025, do you think he's a better prospect than Caden Prather?
Ooh, different body types.
Correct. Oh, they're not the same receiver. It's not the same.
Right. Yeah. No. I get where we're getting at for sure. I totally get it. And then I'm trying to think like, I do think that Brandon Beane would have took Caullin Lacy if they were matched right now, like together, and they were both in the draft in that 7th round pick over Caden Prather. Yeah.
Yeah. So, and what I was hearing was this is a player that has a floor to make a roster.
For sure.
Right. Because
that's what I think,
ultimately, if you're drafting a wide receiver in round 6 or 7, they're going to have to play special teams to be able to make the 53. And, if you don't bring like the kick return or the kick coverage.
Right.
You see, and Ryan Sparks, that's pretty good there.
Yeah. Yeah, I can get
Love
that.
it. Thanks for stopping by, Ryan.
Oh, I like his new role, PFP.
So, Randall, your guy Omega Blake, I think he made the list because he was high on the receiving grades for PFF, and I needed a couple guys to get us up to 64. But what do you have on Omega Blake from Arkansas?
For sure. All right. If you don't see this hat, I'm going to be a little biased as a Razorback fan. But Omega Blake, 6'2", 187. He's a redshirt senior. 3-star prospect turned into a 4-star transfer, which I love his journey in that because he was recruited to South Carolina, so SEC. Took a step, went to Charlotte, went for a year, dominated, and still remained and upticked him into a 4-star transfer to get back into the SEC against Arkansas. When it came to Arkansas, a lot of wide receivers transferred out or got drafted, and Isaac Tesla and Andrew Armstrong, and then our Desmond James went to UCLA, USC, and he transferred out. So we basically had to dive and grab everybody from the portal. And Omega Blake is the one that's shining right now, which is super impressive. He's got 42 catches, 582 yards, 4 touchdowns, yards per route run, 2.40, has 5 yards after the catch per reception, only 2 drops, a 99 passer rating when when targeted, and he was used a lot in the slot in 2024, and now he's being used a lot out wide in 2025. So his adjustment works really well. He's got good stats against big competition. 6 catches for 60 yards against Ole Miss. Notre Dame had 6 catches for 73 yards. Tennessee had 7 for 118 and 1. Texas A&M for 5 for 65. Really good stats against big competition. Always good to see in the SEC. He's quick. He's very twitchy. He can separate in multiple ways. His deceleration is good, not great. His double moves look really good on inside post. He can produce at all levels as well. He has equal amount of receptions on short passes and intermediate passes. He's got 3 touchdowns in the intermediate and air yards from 10 to 19 yards, and then 1 touchdown in the short from 0 to 9. He's got 2 deep ball catches with a contested catch rate of 60%. Stem work is solid. He can plant his foot in the ground and go. Doesn't sell a route leading up to the stem either. That's really good. He's not afraid of catching the ball in traffic. Middle of the field is really his bread and butter. He loves cutting in, catching the ball in the middle and running. That's his bread and butter, which I love. For 6'2", 187, he's got a good catch radius as well. He does really well with the back shoulder throws. My knocks for him is long speed is certainly questionable. At 6'2", 187, I'd like to see that long speed a little bit quicker. And difficulty separating in press man. A lot of his yards do come on soft coverage, so that's a hard evaluation because those are kind of easy, just like we talk about with Caullin Lacy. But if somebody's right on him, same thing. He can CB can kind of just mirror him and walk him through. He has trouble separating in press man, even at the line of scrimmage and at the stem. So you can shut him down, which I'd be curious to see in the second half, is if you just play press man on him constantly. A lot of people do honor him and play soft. But press man, he's got a difficult time at that. And with that being said, with having 6 positives, I think not being able to win in press man at 6'2", 187 is a big concern for me. So I have him in the late day 3, especially with only coming back to the SEC in 1 year, and then not being able to do well in press man. I have him in a late 6th round.
Andy, Omega Blake from Arkansas.
Yeah, Omega Blake has been awesome this year, and I feel like he was the perfect replacement to go get as Arkansas lost Isaac Tesla and Andrew Armstrong to the NFL. Really, I've loved seeing his work after the catch, yards after catch. He is a monster. He is physical. He fights, and that's what I love. He uses 6'2" very well, I feel like. Another thing, his hands are elite. His hands are elite. At one point in the season, he had the most targets without a drop. And I don't know if that's still the case. I just saw that on a post a couple hours ago, so I had to make a note to bring it up here. But yeah, he's just awesome. Every time you see him, it's just contested catch rate. He's getting it done. Like Randall mentioned, the long speed's iffy. The way he separates is iffy, but I think he makes up for it just fine being such a physical player that will always come down with the ball, and you don't need to worry about if he's going to drop it, because if it's thrown in his vicinity, he should probably come down with it because he's shown that time and time again this year. So I like Omega Blake. I would probably put him 5th round range right now because the production has been so elite. He's showing that he's consistent week after week with the production against Notre Dame, SEC competition. This is what you like to see. So yeah, I'd probably say 5th round, and there's room to improve that.
So Andy, do you like Lacy or Omega Blake more?
I like Omega Blake more. I would probably have Lacy in that 7th round range right now to just draft him. He'll make the roster. But Omega Blake, I could see midday 3 right now.
Okay, and Randall, for you, it's reverse, right? You have Lacy higher than Blake, right?
No, I have Omega Blake higher. Caullin Lacy.
Oh, you do? Okay.
Yeah. Caullin Lacy I had with the kick returner. I put him as a late day 3 in the 7th or PFA right now. But I think he could change. But I have Omega Blake higher. I think Andy nailed the rest of
Okay.
this stuff for sure. I think the body control is insane for 6'2", 187. Like he's got a big vertical. I'm curious to see his vertical.
Okay. So I heard you, but I apparently didn't hear didn't hear exactly what you said. So okay, I got it now. Okay, next player, Lewis Bond from Boston College. Andy, what did you see?
Yeah, Lewis Bond has, I believe, 500 yards already. So the production is checking the box, those 500 yards. The past couple weeks, he's getting 70 yards week after week. So I've been a big fan of the production week after week for Lewis Bond. 5'11", 190, has the prototype, slot build that you can just plug and play. After the catch is another place I've liked him. He can take a short yardage throw and make it into a 20, 30 yard even. And that's where a lot of his production has came off of this year. It's another one of those players where I struggle to fully see the NFL fit as of right now, but it's also because, of those 500, it's another case where 140 of them came against Fordham in week 1. So, the production, I want to see it keep it going this way. But if Boston College can produce an 1,000-yard receiver, which they're on pace to right now, he'll undoubtedly get drafted. And it's a question of how he does Senior Bowl, how he does that, or if he goes to the Shrine Bowl, how he does the Combine. That'll be kind of the question for Lewis Bond. Overall, though, I think he could be a plug-and-play guy at the slot in the NFL because he's shown a lot of the work intermediate, middle of the field, short yardage. Just very stable receiver that's, very reliable for Boston College.
Okay, and again, so Andy, do you like Bond more than Lacy and Blake?
I would probably – that's tough. I would probably put right this second – I'd probably put Omega Blake 1, and then it comes down to Lacy and Bond for that 2 spot. I would probably put Lacy slightly higher, though.
Okay. Randall, what do you have on Lewis Bond from Boston College?
Okay, so I would put Bond in the middle because I do agree with Andy to where he could be a plug-and-play slot because he's at 5'11", 190, and he's got a strong build on the lower half, so he can break tackles. He does a good job at that, and he definitely has to fine-tune his route running a little bit. I think he's got to open up his route tree, especially if he's going to be in the slot and play at 5'11", 190. I'd kind of like to see that. But I do agree. I mean, for Boston College, he's a workhorse. Like, he has 1.89 yards per route run. But I believe the only reason he's 1.89 yards per route run is because he's on the field for 95% of the plays for Boston College. So he's constantly running clear outs. He's constantly running routes all the time. So that's where that comes in. But Andy nailed it. Good production against Clemson, Cal, Michigan State. Michigan State, 11 catches for 90 yards. That's impressive. He only has 1 drop this year, which is impressive. He has some speed, but not breakaway speed. I don't think he can separate on seam routes in the slot, on go routes. He can't really. Cornerbacks make that easy for him. He works really well in motion and can catch a flat and run really quickly. I like that. He's fluid in that, and he's fluid in zone reads. He's another wide receiver where he's better in zone than he is in man, and he really understands zone, so he can creep into that second level, sit, does really well in that as well. His deceleration is at average. He's a willing blocker, but definitely needs to work on that, especially with that kind of bigger build. I think he could be a better blocker. With his route running, I think he needs to fine-tune it. He uses hesitation a lot, like how we talked about with Brandon Inniss, and I do like the hesitation, but then he has to complete it at the stem to make sure that he can beat him at the stem when he used the hesitation at the line of scrimmage. So I do like that, so he can work on it. I'm with Andy there. I think he needs to work on it. I do think he's a little bit better. He's a better wide receiver than Caullin Lacy, but then Caullin Lacy has the special team, so that's interesting. They're very close for me, but I think he's in that fringe of 7th round PFA as well right now and can work his way in. He might, and as Andy said, he might be a better college wide receiver than an NFL receiver.
See, and it just took halfway through 3 podcasts that I'm beginning to see where you guys have the players grade, and I can say, do you like player A more than player B? We're in mid-season form here.
You'll get our styles. You'll know by the last podcast. You'll just know what they are.
Yeah. So, Andy, this is your guy being a Colorado Buffaloes fan. So, you want to kick off Sincere Brown from Colorado?
Yeah, Sincere Brown is going to get drafted, and I can tell you that now because he is 6'5" and runs a 4.3 40-yard dash, or so I've heard. 1,000 yards and 12 touchdowns at Campbell a year ago. Comes over to Colorado. Has had some very good moments and some very inconsistent moments. The production is very head scratching to say the least. 2 catches for 24 yards against Iowa State, 1 catch for 17 against TCU, 1 catch for 8 yards against BYU, 1 catch for 68 yards and a touchdown against Wyoming. And that catch was really just the appeal of Sincere Brown because he took it 49 yards after the catch, just caught it middle of the field, and then used his acceleration, his long speed to take it to the house. But the game that I loved the most was the Delaware game. And yes, it was Delaware. And I think Sincere Brown just being that athletically gifted was hard enough for Delaware corners. Just blatantly put. I do think Sincere Brown should put on some weight. I think it's very noticeable how light he is. I think the physicality is a little lackluster because of it. But he has a lot of tools, and just like the physical tools are so enamoring to where this is a guy that I would definitely draft and just see how it would go because 6'5", very fast guy, very athletic guy. And then the production at Campbell, and I know it was Campbell, but you still have to be a very talented football player to get 1,000 yards and 12 touchdowns in a year and then replicate that to a degree in some games this year. He's one where it's going to be very interesting down the stretch of the season if he can establish himself as a certain top target for Colorado, because in some games he has been, some games he hasn't been. He just ghosts in some games, and that's not what you want out of an NFL prospect receiver. I get it as a deep wide receiver room, but Sincere Brown has had opportunities and needs to take advantage of them more. It's interesting where his stock will go from here. Currently, I'd probably put him late day 3, maybe mid day 3 if I'm feeling bold. But yeah, I'd say late day 3 at the moment.
So I guess a comment and a question, Andy. So Sincere Brown is the fastest receiver we've covered today, right? Like if we had to compare him with Ennis and Lacy and Blake, significantly faster, right?
I would say so, yeah.
And then the second question is, do you think the Colorado quarterback room is what is affecting his production?
That was my question.
To a degree. Yeah, to a degree, because it's interesting to note that the best production Sincere Brown had in the Delaware game came with Ryan Staub as quarterback. And the Ryan Staub experiment was very short-lived. You know, he got the second for the Delaware game, he got the Houston game, and then was kicked to the curb. And then, was thrown out. Caden Salter comes back in for the Wyoming game, connects with Sincere Brown one time, and it's a 68-yard touchdown. So it's just like it could be a problem on the quarterback's behalf. I just want to see him get involved more because whenever he gets the ball, typically good things happen. So, I want to see the target production go up for him.
So I think he needs a Senior Bowl invite so we
Bingo.
see him with a better quarterback. But, Randall, what do you have in Sincere Brown?
I really don't have anything else, Jim, because you pretty much stole everything I had. Because I had the question, and I literally have, is QB play at fault here? So then that was my one question for Andy, and then I basically said exactly what Andy was. His athleticism and size profile is so intriguing that somebody's going to draft him, and then he needs a Senior Bowl invite or any invite to show what he's got, and then he'll be a combine darling for sure. So then mix the Senior Bowl with the combine. That's where NFL teams will probably put him where he is. And I think it would probably be like a 5th round. And Andy pretty much nailed it on there. The Campbell stats were incredible. My only concern is his contested catch percentage at this point, is the ball locating and coming down with those balls, especially when you got an NFL. In 2024, even in Campbell, when he went over 1,000 yards and 12 touchdowns, his contested catch rate was 38% for a 6'5", 190 guy, and now it's down to a 25% at Colorado. So that contested catch ability, you need to have, especially for 6'5", got to have over 50% at least to be, in my opinion, NFL caliber in your skill set. But then you know 6'5", 4'3" speed. Sometimes you'll never need to be in a contested catch situation because you're burning kids down the line, sort of thing. So take that with what it is. So if I'm thinking of the future, I think he's going to fall in the 5th round. If his production stays the same, I think he'll be in the 5th round, Jim, just as you said, as he'll probably can be, as long as he gets an invite, an offseason darling for sure.
Okay. And Randall, based on how you just described that, I'm thinking that out of all the receivers we've covered today, he's the highest for you. Am I interpreting your evaluations correctly?
Got it. Yep. I put him just a slight above Omega Blake.
Yep. Because ultimately, if you're drafting a day 3 wide receiver, you take the fast guy and see what happens.
Bingo.
Right. What's the worst thing that can happen? He can take the roof off of the defense.
Yeah. Don't draft Justin Shorter.
Yeah. So Duce Robinson, probably not in this draft class, but a couple of the Florida State draft professors suggested I include him. So, Randall, what do you have on Duce Robinson from Florida State?
All right. Yeah, Duce Robinson. We got a good old 6'6", 223 wide receiver. Love to see it. Started at USC for 2 years, now at Florida State for this year. He was a 5-star prospect for his athleticism and his height. Turned into a 4-star transfer when he went to Florida State. High school scouting report compared him to Darren Waller. So maybe that's a clue in of maybe what he should become in the NFL potentially. But we won't talk about that. But impressive enough to call him into Darren Waller, because remember what Darren Waller was in Oakland and everything along those lines. But 2-star sport in football and baseball. Father played college ball at Florida State, so has the bloodlines. In 2025 through 7 games, you got 29 catches, 541 yards, 3 touchdowns. Outside X, of course, but with good catch and run ability at 5.1 yards after the catch per reception. He's 9 for 13 in contested catch rate, so he's great at locating the ball, high pointing it and grabbing it. He does have, when he does have the ball in his hands, he does have 2 fumbles, so he's got to clean that up. And as you know, we're potentially discussing about staying a year, shouldn't be an issue. Virginia game, super awesome. Basically, just like how we talked about in Sincere Brown, Virginia couldn't handle him at all. Anything that was thrown to him, he got. It was super impressive to watch. He was just basically a varsity kid in a middle school game. But realistically, when we're talking about Duce Robinson, I think Johnny Wilson from last year gets brought up a lot. And Johnny Wilson was kind of that same size, same height. But Duce Robinson, I believe, is a much better wide receiver when it comes down to it. His stem work is pretty solid. He can really change direction quickly and put his foot in the ground and explode at the stem. Sells inside routes well to pull a double move on fades, and I really love that for him. He's got good body control. He's got good understanding in zone. Very QB friendly in that department. Good blocker, obviously, at 6'6", 223, so that comes with its own territory, which is great. The question is, is NFL going to try and turn him into a tight end? I personally think that he should give a shot at wide receiver, especially if he stays another year, because Johnny Wilson got that shot, and I think Duce Robinson is a much better wide receiver than Johnny Wilson. So if he were to declare this year based on his size and his ability, I would put him early round 5, because I think he's such an intriguing option that I would like him on my team. So I put him right there.
Andy.
Yeah, I think Randall nailed it on Duce Robinson. He's going to get comped to Johnny Wilson a lot, and I think he's a lot better than Johnny Wilson. But I also do think he should stay in school another year. With that being said, the production this year has been very fun and intriguing to watch. 541 yards this year, 3 touchdowns, and he's so athletic at 6'6", 225, to where I think he should absolutely get a shot at wide receiver in the pros. The game against Virginia a few weeks ago that went into double overtime was phenomenal for Duce Robinson. He had 9 receptions for 147 yards and a touchdown, and he was just all over the field. He gave you everything in that game, and I think that's one of those games that, like, it's a statement game to, if he were to declare this year, and I don't think he should, but it's possible that he does. If he were to declare this year, that is a game that every GM will point at and say, I'm going to take this guy in round 4 because of what we saw in this game and because of what he can be in the NFL at that size with the production we've seen. Checks a lot of boxes in that area. And I think, like I said, if he comes out next year, I think he could work into being one of the top receivers in that draft. I think he could be a day 2 guy for sure. So Duce Robinson's a very intriguing prospect that I'm a big fan of.
See, and Andy, you almost answered my follow-up question. So what I heard from both of you was Duce Robinson as a 2026 draft pick is getting a day 3 grade from each of you. If he comes out this year, you're grading him day 3.
As of right now, but right now he's
as of this second,
541 yards. Like, if he breaks if he breaks 1,000 and he declares, then we're probably going to have another discussion. Definitely Duce Robinson, if he decides to stay, could be like a December one that we talk about when we're done and revisit if he ends up blowing up.
Yeah. So then my follow-up would be what I heard Andy say is that if he goes back to school, Andy's projecting him where we could see the traits that he's going to be one of the top 5. He's potentially one of the top 5 wide receivers of 2027. Is that what I heard you say, Andy?
It's certainly possible. It's certainly possible, like with those traits, with the production we've seen this year. If he were to return to school, return to Florida State where he's their wide receiver 1, put another year like this and improve off of it, I think he could be a top 5 receiver in a loaded wide receiver class. So that's saying a lot.
Yeah, and the reason why I say that is that if you're watching this podcast and you are not familiar with Duce Robinson, this is an exciting football player. So while he may not be wide receiver 1 next year in a loaded wide receiver class, we could give him a runway to be a top 5 wide receiver next year. He may not be there now, but all of the tools are there. He just needs to stack some consistent performances against the competition he's facing. But even before he was at Florida State, Randall, you said he was at USC, right? So he's not a stranger to top competition.
As a 5-star prospect. So, he's got it.
Yeah. So Duce Robinson is a name that if you're a fan of the draft, you want to be familiar with him. And stay tuned and we'll tell you if he's 2026 or 2027. Okay, so now we have another Baylor receiver. I think this is at least the 3rd Baylor receiver. We've had 3 weeks of podcasts and we've covered a Baylor wide receiver every week. So the Baylor wide receiver of the week is Kobe Prentice, 5'11", 190. Randall, what do you have on Kobe Prentice?
Yeah, senior, 4-star prospect turned into a 3-star transfer, but with that 4-star prospect, he got touted to Alabama, so impressive enough. Spent 3 years in Alabama, transferred over to Baylor, high school track star, speed demon. He could run a 4.38, 4.35 at his best, from what I've seen, which is great. He had in Alabama, he only had 129 yards, 1 touchdown, transferred out. He's already up to 19 catches, 274 yards, and 6 touchdowns. He's got good yards per route run at 2.26, and he only has 2 drops. He's a slot receiver. His best game this year was SMU with 4 catches, 63 yards, and 2 touchdowns. He had a good game against Arizona State with 5 catches and 45. He does have some really good speed. He's a slot receiver, has really, really good speed on go routes and seams. So he creates that mismatch on slower linebackers that he can run right through and catch those seam passes. Not afraid to catch it in traffic, which is really good. Has the decent frame at that 5'11", 190. So he has physicality in the route running and the catch of the run, which is good. Not in the game for all the games, so his yards per route run reflects that, which is great. He takes advantage of every single snap and every target he gets. He's got a 73% reception rate. And then if you look, because some of his stats were down, you look at like Oklahoma State. He had 1 target, 1 catch, 73 yards and a touchdown. Kansas State, 3 targets, 1 catch, 30 yards and a touchdown. Auburn, 2 targets, 2 catches, 38 yards and a touchdown. He's already got 6 touchdowns on the year, and he's doing it with as efficiently as a lot of wide receivers that do not do so. That's really impressive when it comes to Kobe Prentice. His route running is solid, but it is limited. He can motion behind the line of scrimmage and catch and run, but a lot of his routes are really comebacks, outs, and goes. If he's going to be a slot receiver in the NFL, he's really got to open up his route tree and become more apt in the short passing game as well as being in their intermediate. So that's what I'd like to see out of him. Right now, his 6 touchdowns is intriguing, and his efficiency is really intriguing. I have him as a 7th-round pick right now, but I wouldn't be surprised if NFL teams see him as a PFA. Jury's still out for him. I'm hoping that he gets some good production in the final rest of the year. If he breaks 10 touchdowns, then we're talking about you draft him no matter what sort of thing, but definitely has to fine-tune the route running.
Andy, what do you have on Kobe Prentice from Baylor?
Yeah, I think Randall nailed it. Kobe Prentice is a guy that I really want to see get targeted more because when he gets targeted, he's typically doing really good things with it. The route running is limited, as Randall mentioned, but the production for as limited targets as he had has been very enticing. For being a senior, last year he was at Alabama, 129 yards, 1 touchdown, so still very limited production. And the games he had production, most of it came against Western Kentucky and South Florida. So, albeit, he hasn't been super productive up until this year where he has 6 touchdowns. And even then, the production could still be a lot better. So I agree with Randall completely in the way that I think he's probably a 7th-round guy who the NFL might view as a PFA because nothing really flashes as a super elite trait. I think he's got all the tools of a good slot receiver, but I want to see him put it together at the college level before we start talking about him putting it together at the NFL level.
Okay. And Andy, I remember when you were looking over the list, you're like, got to make sure Omar Cooper Jr. was included.
Yeah.
So tell us why you wanted to make sure Omar Cooper Jr. was one of the 64 wide receivers that we evaluated.
I think Omar Cooper has been I think he might be the biggest riser on my wide receiver board to this point in the season because coming out of really just nowhere this season, not nowhere because he had a very solid year for Indiana last year, but I feel like the NFL draft community wasn't talking about him a ton up until a couple weeks ago. And Fernando Mendoza helps a lot with that. But Omar Cooper Jr. does his fair share at putting it back. 581 yards, 8 touchdowns so far. Monster game against Michigan State just a couple days ago. 8 receptions, 115 yards, 1 touchdown. The touchdown being a 48-yard touchdown that was just perfectly executed by him. The game against Indiana State, albeit Indiana State, 10 receptions, 207 yards, 4 touchdowns. You could have told me that was a quarterback stat line, and I would have said, yeah, that makes sense. 207 yards, 4 touchdowns. That is a quarterback stat line for a wide receiver. He was the biggest reason why they beat Indiana State 73-0 in that game. He was a huge reason why they put 73 on the board. He just does a lot of things you like to see out of a receiver. He is a very good football player. I think that is the best way I could put it. And right now, I think I would put a 3rd-round grade on him. And I know it's early because, like I said, the NFL draft community hasn't been talking about him a ton up until a couple weeks ago. But I'm starting to get really high on Omar Cooper just because of what we've seen. And yeah, he is a big part of being a part of one of the best wide receiver duos in the country this year.
Yeah, he is a teammate that we're going to be covering. It's either the last week or the second to last week. But
my guy.
Randall, what do you have on Omar Cooper Jr. from Indiana?
Okay, so I'm gonna talk really well of him, temper some expectations, and then land exactly where Andy is, which is gonna be kind of out there. But he was a 3-star prospect. Family has a big history in basketball. His mom was a college basketball player, so his family revolved around basketball. He chose football, which was great. 2025. So to temper the analytics, in 2025, he's got 581 yards, 7 touchdowns. I think he's top 10 in yards per route run in the league. But to temper some of those analytics, as Andy said, Indiana State had the big game. His yards per route run was 8.63 yards per route run, which is a crazy yards per route run, which kind of adjusts that. Total 3.16. And then in Michigan State, he had 4.42. So that kind of skewed a little bit of his being in a top 10 yards per route run for sure. But then he puts up good numbers against Oregon, 7 for 58. Illinois, 6'78". So he really does show that he can do it in big competition as well. And even being next to somebody like his counterpart, Elijah Surratt, is super interesting. I love his size and his kind of basketball background at 6 foot 200 pounds. Like when we talk about basketball backgrounds, we talk about X style receivers that can jump and high point the ball. But he kind of runs routes like he is in that basketball, like that point guard, shooting guard. He's not going to blow everybody away on his 40, but I'm super interested to see what his short shuttle is and his 3-cone because he's very twitchy and he's got really fast feet, and I love that about it. Strong enough at the line of scrimmage with good releases to beat press. He's really fluid in the run after catch, super hard to take down, has a good low center of gravity, so he stays up, and he always is looking for those 2 to 3 extra yards, stretching over to the first down marker. That's just dog mentality. Just as Andy said, he's a good football player, and he really kind of like instinctually does a lot of things that NFL football players do, which I love. He's got suction cup hands, 3 drops in college so far. He had a catch versus Illinois that was a slant in the middle of the field. It was a targeting call. Basically went horizontal in the air, still had the ball, got up, pointed to the first down. Super impressive. And then had a tough catch versus Oregon on the flat where he had to torque his body with good body control, catch it, and it looked so fluid that it didn't look difficult, but he was able to catch and run on it and pick up that first down. So like stuff like that, you just watch and you're like, yes, like that's NFL caliber, and that's an NFL caliber wide receiver. Like right now, I don't think he's going to leave the 3rd round. I agree with Andy. I think he's a 3rd round pick.
Okay. So that finishes up the wide receivers for this week. So while I'm looking up the list for next week, Randall, do you want to introduce yourself to everybody watching and let them know about all of your other content?
For sure. Yeah. At Randall Slifer. You can find me on Twitter and Blue Sky. I'm with a company with Duce Champions. I do a Buffalo Bills podcast that airs Mondays at 8:30 Eastern, 7:30 Central on Mondays. I do Draft Professors as much as I can, and definitely me and Andy are always here on Tuesday nights. I try to squeeze in where I can otherwise. And then I am also with Team MBS Media. I write for them for Arkansas Razorbacks and Buffalo Bills. And I'm also a part of their NFL Draft Central that begins late after the college season ends, and we go over the draft as well.
Andy.
Yeah, I'm at Andy NFL on Twitter with 2 Ys. Andy NFL on Substack. Trying to get more consistent with my posts on Substack, but I post every day on Twitter. Various film, stuff like that. Dropping big boards, mock drafts, all that fun stuff. We're getting closer and closer to the real draft season, and every week we're talking about draft season updated boards. Really fun time.
Yeah. So we are here every Tuesday. Randall, Andy, and I will be discussing the entire wide receiver class. So we're going through what we anticipate to be every wide receiver drafted in rounds 1 through 5. That's our goal. We have evaluated 24 wide receivers. We have 40 more to go. So next week is the halfway point, guys. We've covered 24, and the next week we'll have 32. The 8 wide receivers for next week: Caleb Douglas from Texas Tech, Caden Lee from Ole Miss, Hudson Clement from Illinois, Donovan McCulley from Michigan, Romello Brinson from SMU, Jaden Greathouse from Notre Dame, DeAndre Moore Jr. from Texas, and Barian Brown from LSU.
That's a good
so
one.
those will be the wide receivers that we cover next week. And I was like teasing Ramsey's my son's name. I was teasing Randall and Andy in the chat like the last 3 weeks. We have some really good wide receivers. And as I look at like the last 3 weeks, I think there's only the only underclassman that I definitely know about is Nick Harbor.
Oh, yeah.
So
and that's a good one.
Out of the last 24, I think 23 will definitively be in this class, whereas today and last week we had a couple guys that were saying we hope that they go back. But anyway, so I think this is stacking up based upon the evals I've already heard. This is actually stacking up to be a pretty good wide receiver class. So
it is. I agree.
Yeah, so if you need a wide receiver, you might be able to get 2. It's like that
Buffalo,
type
we
of
need
wide
one.
receiver class. You can grab a guy round 3, you can grab a guy round 7, and have him duke it out in camp.
Buffalo, Surratt, and called Lacy.
Exactly. Exactly.
Yeah.
And in about 40 minutes, we have another podcast coming on where Owen and Jerry Ostrowski are going to begin breaking down the offensive line class. So if you're into the draft, we are covering the draft at 7 p.m. and 9 p.m. Eastern every weeknight, and we're just discussing different positions with different people. And then by the time December rolls around, we will have a draft board for you. So for Randall, Andy, myself, for the 105 podcasters at the Draft Professor, thanks for watching, everybody, and we'll see you on a podcast again in about 40 minutes.